Friends, I am Devesh Vijay, retired associate professor from Department of History, Zakir Hussain, Delhi College. Interested in exploring social theory in light of field research which I have been conducting in UP and Delhi for last 4 decades. It is a pleasure for me to deliver this talk for the refresher course organized by the TLC Center at Ramanujan College. The title of my talk today is Indian Culture, its Principal Features, Direction, and a Theoretical Conundrum. Obviously, to talk about culture is to take a challenging task, and the only credentials I have for this undertaking is my field experience in some villages, slums, as well as middle class households, for which I have been conducting interdisciplinary research, as I said, for last 4 decades. Now, before I come to the topic, I must make a confession regarding my theoretical and ideological leanings, because a speaker's assumptions often subconsciously shape his or her perceptions also, and listeners must be aware of the theoretical standpoint from which anyone is speaking or writing. Broadly speaking, my theoretical leaning is towards Max Weber rather than Karl Marx, and among Indian authors, my principal inspirations have been Andre Bete and Sudhir Kakkar. Ideologically, I may be broadly characterized as a liberal, but I have had clear discomfort with the latest leftist uh, turnaround towards postmodernism and wokeness, etc. Now, I'll give my email ID to the organizers, and I hope that my lecture may be of use to you from across uh, specializations. And if you have any criticism or comment, you're most welcome to send it to me, so that this is not an entirely one way monologue. Coming to the topic, we need to first define the terms that are central to it. As far as the term culture is concerned, it is important to note that this is used in diverse ways, and I have chosen one particular notion that I shall explain. But to be familiar with alternative usages, let us see that in common parlance, often culture refers to fine arts, high culture of music, dance, philosophy, science, literature, etc. For example, when we say uh, we have our college cultural program today, here we are referring to culture as a program of music, dance, and so on. On the other extreme, anthropologists have often used the term culture to refer to society as a whole. For example, Munda culture or Japanese culture and so on. In between these two extremes, there is a more theoretically useful way of using the term to refer to widely shared beliefs, values, traits that are seen in any community. These can be roughly referred as mentalities. But where do mentalities come from? Indirectly, they are shaped by entire historical experience of a region, also by its economic and physical environment, but more directly by a set of cultural institutions which include, above all, religion, education system in the community, its media channels, folklore, its linguistic structure, and ideologies that may be promoted by special organized groups in that community. All these jointly shape these widely shared mentalities or values, beliefs, loyalties, identities, etc., that are in people's minds. They shape their behavior, so they are extremely important to understand. Unfortunately, research on mentalities has been very limited. They are not only missing in textbooks, but even in advanced research, very little has been done to map the mentality patterns across regions of the globe. While anthropologists focused on culture, but normally studied small communities and tribes, etc., cultural Marxists and subaltern scholars often tended to merely repeat their pet theme of resistance and hegemony existing side by side in the proletariat and peasant consciousness, etc., thereby abjuring the larger task of mapping the differences in mentality patterns and how they have changed over time. This has been done to some extent very well by some annals scholars, especially Marc Bloch, Lucien Febvre, and Brodel, etc. It's ironical that this tradition, which evolved about a century ago, has not been taken up by historians in a big way, although notable scholars like E.P. Thompson and Carlo Ginzburg, etc., can be referred as exceptions. Now, if mentalities are so significant, why are they so neglected? I think one reason is that obviously they are immeasurable, they are invisible, they are complex and difficult to map, but also it is very sensitive at times and controversial often to comment upon mentalities of different communities. As a result, while cultural mentalities are referred to in many daily conversations, as for example, when someone says that the Pathans are a brave lot, for whom valor is the supreme ideal, or Bengalis are like that. They are referring to mentalities and behavior patterns which are widely shared. Yet, as I said, in textbooks as well as advanced research, not much has been done to map out exactly the variations in mentalities across communities around the globe. Now, how do we interpret mentalities? As I said, anthropologists have done uh, best work in this direction, although at the level of small communities, often pre-modern communities. And they have evolved certain methods to do this, especially the method of interpreting values, beliefs, worldviews, etc., from communities' symbols. Now, the selection of symbols to interpret mentalities remains with the anthropologist. Someone may choose to look at Ram Leela, for example, or puja, arti, to draw upon insights regarding Hindu mentalities. Someone else may look at the gossip at the weddings or the obscenity in cinema or the chatter in TV serials, etc., to do the same. These are all interpretations of worldviews, belief patterns, etc., from symbols. Symbols in one case were Ramlila and Aarti, in another case were the entertainment sector, cinema, TV serials, etc. However, this approach leaves a lot to the anthropologist himself in terms of discerning the exact patterns of mentalities that are being studied. This is its limitation. In another method, one can use surveys and interviews to let the studied community members themselves talk about their ideas and so on. But this has the limitation of people playing up to present a particular self-image in interviews and so on. I think a better method is to look at the choices made by people in their daily activities as well as extraordinary emergencies, which are reflected in their actions. This can be called the interpretation of mentalities from praxis or cognate action or thought out action. Obviously, there is a problem of how we apply this method to the distant past. One obvious solution is that we look at biographies, chronicles of various events, also events and actions registered in inscriptions and so on, the various historical sources, to do a historical anthropology of praxis. This is the method which I have roughly tried to apply in today's talk also. In today's talk, we are, as the title suggests, focusing on outstanding features of Indian culture in the level of mentalities. Here it is important to also underline that often mentality patterns, beliefs, values, etc., are talked about with some romanticization by members of a culture themselves. That is, that mentalities and cultures can have embarrassing or unseemly aspects also, but they are often overlooked. However, from the social scientist perspective, it is important to look at the laudable or glorious as well as the uh, unseemly or embarrassing aspects of shared mentalities and culture. In fact, this is extremely important because only by looking at both positive and negative aspects of culture and traditions, or as I am focusing specifically on shared mentalities in any group, can we think of improving the social and cultural context of communities through education, honors, government policy, etc. Now, when we talk about Indian culture, an objection can be raised. Is there one Indian culture? Isn't there a North Indian versus South Indian variation? Or within North, between, say, Rajasthan, Delhi, etc.? How can we talk about one Indian culture despite these obvious variations that are evident even at the level of people's beliefs, values, behavior patterns? To this, my answer is that actually cultures are always overlapping circles. People have several identities at the same time, and corresponding to them, they belong to various kinds of communities at the same time, and they are thus members of various categories of cultures. It is up to us, according to our research interest, to choose one or more of these loci of culture. So there is no contradiction between studying, say, Haryanvi culture or Indian culture or even Asian cultural traditions, South Asian cultures. It is up to us which one we wish to pick up. They don't overrule each other. Now, what are the important features of Indian culture that stand out and are not only pan Indian but also distinctive to India? This is what we are going to focus on in particular. But as I said, not at the level of high culture, but in terms of mentalities that are widely shared. Now, some of the important features which immediately come to mind that are often talked about in Indian mentalities are the claim that we are a very tolerant people, that we have accommodated outsiders, even invaders over time, and evolved a kind of syncretic culture over periods without much violence. Our tolerance is also illustrated through the uh, lack of invasions carried out from the Indian subcontinent outside, also in terms of disinterest in forceful conversions from the Hindu community, which is the majority community in the region, and so on. The laudable trait of tolerance, syncretism, and pluralism noted in Indian culture has been linked to the value of Vasudev Kutumbakam at times. That is, our culture saw the world as a family and therefore extended tolerance to Jews, Parsis, tormented refugees coming to this land, including early Muslims who came not as invaders but sometimes as uh, refuge seekers. However, this noble trait of tolerance and syncretism also has a uh, dark side. For example, uh, often the coexistence between communities was back to back. There was little learning from each other. Secondly, within Hinduism, the hierarchic caste order and even the practice of untouchability defy this idea of word being seen as a family by the Hindu tradition. And lastly, the uh, existence of uh, about a third of Muslim population in the South Asian subcontinent has not betrayed the same kind of tolerance that is claimed regarding Indian culture in general, and they form a substantial chunk. This reminds me that the notion of syncretism and pluralism, although not wrong, as a lot of exchange of ideas, traits, etc., happened both at elite level and at popular level between Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, etc. Yet, uh, the same does not apply equally to all communities. And there has been a tendency to cover up the ugly fact that there have been riots even on small matters like music, like uh, food habits, etc., and continue even to this day. As we said, we should look at both the moles and the warts in our cultural imagery and not shy away from noting the unseemly aspects of culture also. Next to tolerance and syncretism, another important uh, characterization of Indian culture has been in terms of our unique spirituality. Now, spirituality is common to almost all cultures from pre modern times, but in Indian case, it can be argued that uh, the dominant or the majority Hindu community uh, had viewed the world not only as transient as it is seen in Abrahamic religions, for example, and less important than the other world, but it also views it as Maya or totally unreal, uh, misconception. Similarly, it views the individual soul as related or part of the Supreme Being, Atma as expression of the Paramatma or Brahm. Now, these are unique features of Hindu spirituality. Uh, Linked to the same is the notion of dharma. Dharma is unique again from other religions in not having any single uh, sacred book or prophet or uh, a single code of conduct, but generally prescribing duties. That is the notion of dharma. Duty, fullness, and that is why we see the number of vegetarians, teetotalers, uh, monogamous relationships uh, seem much higher in proportion uh, among followers of Dharma uh, in the Indian subcontinent. Here, let me repeat, we can look at culture in our region in four levels: the South Asian level, the Indian culture, then the Hindu culture, and the Indianness derived from the majority Hindu community. For example, caste, which was originally, of course, Hindu sanatan trait, but it has had its imprint on Indian Christians, Indian Muslims, etc. also. So these four levels can be simultaneously compared in terms of shared mentalities. Now, this spirituality that is unique to the Indian culture has again a dark side also. On the one hand, it leads to faith in divine justice rather than social justice or justice ensured through well developed political and social institutions. That is why we see very few rebellions, even against untouchability, in India or Indian history. Uh, Also, our spirituality was expressed in special place accorded to saints, fakirs, etc. But not all have been as pious or noble as presented in popular imagery through their own propaganda. So, these are some of the negative sides of the spirituality uh, characteristic of Indian culture. Next to discuss is the special place that family has in Indian culture. Now, in all cultures, family remains a central institution of society, but in India, not only is loyalty towards family uh, of the nuclear kind, but also to the entire joint family, and responsibilities towards members of joint family has a special place. Uh, this is a little unique. In fact, in rituals, in festivals, even distant relatives have an important role to play in Indian culture. And the special brother sister tie is quite unique, it seems, uh, here, and is celebrated in beautiful festivals like Raksha Bandhan, etc., that are quite unique to India. On the negative side, family also has some uh, unseemly aspects. Uh, of course, the ideals of family ties, filial loyalty, and elders' respect, etc., are naturally not followed always in reality. That is common across cultures. But what is special here is that, especially the position of women, has naturally not been of equal terms. It is true that this patriarchy is not unique to India. In fact, it may have been less severe than in some other cultures, but uh, female infanticide uh, and practice of sati, etc., besides parda amongst Muslims, and the permission of triple talaq in Sharia, etc., naturally placed women uh, subordinated to their menfolk within the family. Besides family, another important aspect of uh, Indian culture is the celebrated unity in diversity. Now, diversity is not surprising in a land of subcontinental size, but what is striking is the fact that even within uh, cities and villages, a lot of diversity can be seen in customs of different castes and communities. But that doesn't mean that there is no underlying unity, and that is the important and more challenging thing to discern. What are these threads of unity across various religions, regions, castes, classes, etc., in India? And especially, what are the ones which are unique to India? Obviously, one most important such feature is caste. As I mentioned, it is pan Indian and almost unique to India. But besides caste, uh, our arts and crafts, both at elite and popular levels, show various threads of unity. Seen, for example, in our classical music traditions, uh, in our architecture, and at the popular level, in the uh, appeal of our major epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, seen all over India, uh, and also the respect for fakirs and mazars, even of other religions, that is seen at the popular level, are common throughout India. Here it may be mentioned, we have uh, highlighted three outstanding features already of unique spirituality, of tolerance and pluralism, and our family structure. These are all pan Indian features and have some uniqueness. Besides the culture, cultural facet, uh, unity in diversity can also be seen in political and social terms. For example, in our functioning democracy, in our nationalism, and our proud freedom struggle, which has a glorious history and in which Indians participated from across regions, religions, castes, etc. These are all threads of unity which tie India together. And today we can also add that Bollywood and its music and songs also have a pan Indian unique appeal, uh, and is a thread of unity across languages, uh, religions, etc. Now, besides unity in diversity, continuity and adaptability has also been a very important feature of Indian culture and our values and belief patterns. But before I comment on that, let me remind that there are certain cultural traits that are exaggerated and romanticized often in political discourses as well as popular uh, perceptions. These, for example, include ideas that India was a Vishwaguru, or uh, it was a land of rivers of honey and milk, or that Indians may be poor but still are excellent hosts, etc. Now, these claims uh, obviously seem a bit exaggerated. Uh, I won't go into all of them, but let us take one example of India being uh, highlighted as the Vishwaguru in the distant past. No doubt we had universities to which thousands of uh, students came from all over the world, especially from neighboring countries. But it is equally important to note that very little learning was imbibed by Indians from the outside world, even though China was, for example, very advanced in science and technology, The Roman Empire had a rich legal tradition and rationalist uh, uh, culture, and very few Indians themselves went outside uh, to learn and observe or wrote about it, with some exceptions like Nagarjuna and so on. Secondly, it is true that we made tremendous advances in some branches of science, and especially of our gift of yoga, Ayurveda, etc., are relevant even today for the entire world. But equally, we must remember that we were not very developed in many other branches of knowledge. For example, we have had very few documented historical accounts. Similarly, we were facing invasions repeatedly from the west, mainly through three small passes, but we failed to uh, stall these invasions. In fact, we had very little strategic planning on these issues, even though these invasions at times were extremely brutal. And another major problem this land has always faced is of famines, uh, because it is dependent on monsoon. And though irrigation works were extensive in China, ancient Rome, etc., India did not develop canal networks of that scale. So, this is not to deny that India has had a very rich uh, tradition of high culture, but to say we were Vishwaguru in all respects is obviously an exaggeration. Now, coming back to the last important feature of Indian culture uh, that we refer to as continuity and adaptability. No doubt, India is the oldest surviving civilization. Though we are not the oldest civilization of the world, but the ones which were older, like Egypt and Sumeria, uh, became extinct, while the Sanatan tradition, starting from Vedas and maybe having some roots in the Indus Valley civilization also, as reflected in the imagery of Pashupatinath in some Indus seals. This tradition has survived through adaptation for centuries, in fact, millennia. Now, this has been due to adaptability uh, given by some processes within our culture, like Sanskritization, by which those castes which could acquire sufficient economic and political power could be admitted to higher ranks over time. So, this made the system survive by making it flexible. Similarly, syncretism is another process through which uh, Indian civilization managed to continue despite major ruptures also. Two major ruptures need to be noted in this respect. The biggest ones being the Islamic invasions and the establishment of Muslim rule, uh, especially in North India, and the later arrival of the Europeans and the establishment of the British Empire in India. Now, Indian culture has managed to survive these ruptures. Uh, as noted, Indian Muslims exhibit important features of Indian culture like caste uh, practice, the caste replication. Also, Indian Muslims uh, show practices like Sufi singing, music, etc. And the Mughal art and architecture obviously borrowed motifs from native Hindu culture also. All these are examples of syncretism. This is not to deny, however, as I said, as many social scientists tend to do, that the relation between Hindus and Muslims has not become completely harmonious and syncretic till this day, and communal riots are an extremely worrisome example of this. Yet sufficient borrowing happened, and both traditions borrowed from each other and coexisted. Uh, Regarding the colonial conquest, although some today refer to the Islamic conquest as the first colonization and British conquest as second coloniality, but modernization ushered through Western impact brought by British rule was undoubtedly uh, an even bigger rupture. And Indian culture, both Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, adapted in fact to modern education, nationalism, electoral politics, etc., quite remarkably. And in fact, Indian democracy is one of the unique polities in the world where a underdeveloped country has adapted and thrived through uh, functional democratic politics over such a long period. Similarly, after the British rule, globalization has affected India obviously in a major way. Yet, our role in the IT industry, in modern science and technology, in the arrival of mobile phones in our villages, etc., all has been adopted without any breakdown. And the culture has continued in the same way, the culture that we are saying of our unique family, religiosity, caste, etc., that has continued. A very positive development was the social reform movements that started in the wake of modernization, uh, and almost revolutionary, uh, outstanding changes came in the structure of patriarchy as well as caste hierarchy through legal reforms as well as influence of reformers and reform movements like Arya Samaj, uh, like the Aligarh University, etc. across regions. Uh, Lastly, let us look at some darker sides of Indian culture, of which obviously caste is one, and practice of untouchability, although it has changed in major ways since independence, uh, at the ground level, even in villages. Uh, Besides this, there are some uh, eccentricities which are quite uh, marked in Indian culture. For example, we seem to be uh, quite indifferent towards contradictions in our beliefs and values. Although contradictions are a human trait, but the way in which Indian scientists, for example, uh, do rituals and seek auspicious timing for launching satellites, etc., is unique to India. Similarly, our family structure and values are against uh, stark individualism, uh, yet we accept uh, Bollywood entertainment, which plays it in a major way, and also our villages, etc., show a lot of uh, disregard for individuality. Uh, in my stay in West UP villages, for example, I saw that till recent times there were no personal bedrooms for young couples also. This is a very recent development in Indian villages. Uh, Similarly, absence of toilets, even in better off homes in villages, uh, are a very stark feature of Indian society, and possibly present in other regions also. Here it would be relevant to take note of an important controversy regarding the origins of caste structure and rigidity in India. Recently, both Western and Indian scholars, from Bernard Cohn to Professor Makhanlal to Ishita Dubey, have tended to suggest that caste system actually became rigid only under the colonial rule, as the processes of census and reservations, etc., got underway. Uh, in my reading, using uh, historical anthropology, examples of Eklavya from Mahabharata or Shambhu from Uttarkand of Ramayana, or the references to Varna Sankar Samaj in Bhagavad Gita, or the accounts of Megasthenes, etc., they all suggest that both untouchability and birth based caste did exist in ancient India also. Further, we must also note that in the Indian cultural system, as I said, caste permeates non-Hindu communities also, and it is part of a larger ethos which is extremely hierarchic and values or accord status according to birth and social position, whether it is gender discrimination, class based discrimination, uh, ethnicity based discrimination. All these have existed, and instead of pushing them under the carpet, it would be proper to further strengthen the correctives that have come, uh, fortunately, uh, peacefully and with cooperation of all communities, whether it is in our laws, in our affirmative action, they need to be strengthened, uh, and the blame need not be apportioned to colonial rule in this regard alone. Looking towards future now, uh, we need to note the variety of processes which are accelerating, like technological change, globalization, expansion of welfare state, some improvements in development indices, especially life expectancy, and the uh, coming of the internet, smartphones, and the artificial intelligence, that are all likely to affect our culture also very deeply. While they are going to open up new opportunities and improve living standards and also make learning information more easily available, they are likely to also add to some negative tendencies like breakup of family, like increasing depression rate, uh, while life expectancy is rising, sudden heart attacks and such problems are also uh, accumulating. In this light, we need to use these same tools to devise a new cultural policy and measures as well. For example, reform education in order to promote greater civic consciousness among our new generation, democratic accountability of our institutions, and work ethic. All these can be promoted and boosted further by the same technologies that are now available to us. With this, I would like to conclude my talk now, and I look forward, as I said, to any comments or criticisms that you may have on the email ID already sent to you. You will receive a set of questions from the organizers for testing your benefit derived from the present talk. So I look forward to all these responses. Thank you.